This week on Women Who Rise, I'm joined by Caroline Brown, visibility and leadership expansion coach, somatic practitioner, and a woman who knows firsthand what it takes to move from hiding to being fully seen. We're unpacking why capable, ambitious women still dilute their voices, how people-pleasing and perfectionism become forms of protection, and what it means to build confidence without performing it. Caroline shares how she learned to stop letting fear make her decisions, why leadership sometimes requires being misunderstood, and how to build a business around your life instead of losing your life inside that business. If you've ever known you were meant for more, but felt afraid of the visibility that more requires, this conversation will meet you exactly where you are and challenge you to take up the space that is already yours. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Women Who Rise. I'm your host, Heather Mansy. Today, I'm joined by Caroline Brown, the founder of Caroline Brown Coaching and a visibility and leadership expansion coach, helping women stop hiding, trust their voices, and grow businesses that feel like an honest expression of who they are. A registered nurse, coach, and somatic practitioner, Caroline brings a powerful whole person perspective to the patterns that keep accomplished women stuck. People-pleasing, perfectionism, fear of judgment, and the pressure to remain likable. Her own journey from being deeply uncomfortable with attention to building a business around authentic visibility gives her work an honesty that goes far beyond surface-level confidence advice. Caroline believes leadership begins when we stop allowing fear to make our decisions. And today we're exploring what it takes to be fully seen without abandoning yourself in the process. Caroline, thank you so much for being on our program today and welcome to the show.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Well, we are so excited to have you. I want to jump straight into one word that kind of grabbed me in the intro and I think may also grab others. We don't hear it very often. It's that word somatic. Can you define somatic practitioner for our audience?
Yeah. So I think the easiest way to understand that, I do get that question a lot because I think it's becoming more well known, but it's not like totally mainstream yet. I think the best way to define it is I learned very early in coaching that people weren't going to make change just from mindset alone. So mindset isn't going to get them there. Like they were still feeling that energy stuck in their body. So when we talk about somatics, we're talking about the energy in your body, bringing your nervous system along for the ride, bringing your whole body along for the ride. So you can know what you want to do in your head. You can speak really kindly to yourself, but you still feel stuck. And that's where we bring in somatics, where we work with your body to actually allow you to step towards the things that you want.
Fantastic. Yeah, I don't know why, but I had this idea of, an episode, I think 7 Perfect Strangers or something, where they were all like screaming in a cave, and I thought just came into my mind. Who knows if that's one of the things you use. But I've also been in, floor exercise rooms where, you're kind of laying down and they're going through visualizations and, you hear the rain stick and everything. It's interesting. All of which, by the way, I think can be really impactful. I've done work in that way, but I think also it's a broad field that can be utilized and perhaps interpreted in different ways depending on the practitioner. Before you became a coach, you built an identity around being capable, agreeable, helpful, and easy to love.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, none of that sounds bad, right? It sounds like kind of an ideal
that version of me.
Yeah. When you look back at your earliest work experiences, where do you think that you first learned that being valuable meant reading the room and becoming what other people needed?
Hmm. Well, I don't think it was just work experiences. It really goes back to, my entire life. As a little kid, if there was chaos going on or something going on that felt uncomfortable, my body did what all of ours do. It jumped in and started trying to make it more comfortable. And that meant being the easy one, right? Being the one who could always get the good grades. Um, there's some basic needs that we all have: belonging, love, and if you get the good grades, if you do really well. And that's not a jip to my parents or anything like that, because we all have things. My kids will have things. We all have things that we pick up from the world around us. So from a very early age, maybe 3 years old, I can't define a time when I did not live this way. I was always proving I was the best at things. I always wanted the gold stars. I wanted to be the one who got the good grades, got into any school that I wanted, did all the things. And I think by the time I went into the workplace, that was all so ingrained in who I was that I didn't realize I was functioning on masks. Like, I was essentially showing up in the world with protection all around me, showing up as the strong one, showing up as the high achiever. And
Yeah.
it wasn't until it all started to kind of break down and I started to feel really stuck and resentful that I realized, okay, maybe this isn't exactly who I am. Maybe it's not my personality. Maybe it's just who I've learned to be.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people can certainly relate to that. I think just the fact that you took it back to childhood, this was some sort of like a winning formula that allowed you to, like you say, feel comfortable, receive belonging and love, and have, a mask or a guard that allowed you to exist in the world and be able to rebuff the things that didn't work and be able to get the things that you needed. You've said that there was a time when even being put on the spot among friends could bring you to tears. Yet today, your work asks women to become more visible and fully expressed. What happened internally that allowed visibility to shift from something you feared into the foundation of your leadership?
Yeah, so I was literally the person who I could be in a group of 6 women just sitting there, and they were going around doing the icebreaker, where they
Yeah.
were each person introduce yourself and say something interesting about yourself, and I
Yeah.
could not do it. The entire time they're going around the circle, all I'm thinking, I'm not hearing what anyone's saying. All I'm thinking is, "Oh my gosh, they're coming to me, and I'm going to have to everyone's going to look at me, and I'm gonna
Yeah.
have to answer this question." And by the time they'd get to me, I was like in tears. I had hives up my neck. I was like, can everybody please just look away? I cannot do this. It was so wildly uncomfortable for
Yeah.
me. And I had learned, there were a couple bigger moments in life that brought me to be so wildly uncomfortable being the center of the room. But how I moved through that was I talk about my nervous system all the time. I talk about people's nervous system. This is a part of somatics is working with our nervous system.
Yeah.
And essentially my nervous system was functioning on old outdated patterns where I had been laughed at in 5th grade, right? Or I
Yes.
had done something stupid and everyone, like, it became a thing. It became something that people talked about for years. So visibility equaled danger. And so I had
Mhm.
to rewire my nervous system with little steps at a time, taking a small step, running a workshop and being in front of people, and then celebrating myself for it. Uh, doing something small where a group of women was looking at me, or I was staying present in the conversation and listening to the other person, and I would celebrate myself, and I would taught my body in really small steps. It's actually safe to stay present, stay in the room, and a massive step forward for me was speaking on stage at my best friend's funeral.
Uh,
Uh, just because I never thought I would do something like that. I never
yeah.
thought that would be a part of my story, but that day really catapulted me forward, and there were, like, a couple things that I built in that day without realizing it that helped my nervous system be calm enough to actually do that, and then afterwards to celebrate myself. So, that was a huge
Amazing.
jumping forward point in my business. But this is all what makes me so good at what I do with women, because I know what it feels like to sit there and be like, I do not want the attention on me. I could have never done something like this.
That's incredible. And I loved how just the trajectory of how you were able to change over time, and how you
Hmm.
were able to implement, who you were just gradually in stages, starting with that awareness. And then, like you say, resetting that nervous system and recognizing what it was operating on. And I'm sure doing a lot of work around that. And then being able to kind of incrementally get your feet wet, and I like how you said you're celebrating those incremental wins. We forget to reward ourselves as adults the way we would reward our kids for something that is a job well done, or, an uncomfortable scenario realized, that they were able to overcome, or, do well in. We forget
Yeah.
to give ourselves credit, I think, in adulthood, and perhaps especially as women as well.
Especially as women. I mean, I tell the women that I work with all the time, we celebrate the action, not the result. We celebrate taking the step forward. We celebrate inviting someone into our business. We celebrate doing the scary thing, not whether or not it's a yes or a no, not whether or not we actually got the result that we want.
Yeah.
And I think that makes a huge difference.
That is amazing. And I like the distinction with that as well. And I think very informative. So let's shift gears a little bit. You discovered that many of the qualities that you had accepted as your personality, staying agreeable, avoiding attention, second guessing yourself, were actually forms of protection. What was the most difficult pattern to release among those? And what did letting go of it make possible in your life and business
Mhm.
expression?
Yeah, good question. So I'll say the one that was the hardest for me to release was people pleasing. That
Mm,
probably doesn't come as a shock to most people. I have a quiz out that 75% of the women who take it get people pleaser essentially as their result. And most people come to me and they think, oh, I'm just a people pleaser. This is just who I am. People pleasing is just a part of my personality. And people pleasing is not a part of your personality. It is a protection, it is a nervous system response that our body jumps to in order to keep us safe in a situation. So rather than hearing crickets and hearing no one respond, you're going to jump in and socially make it easier for the other people, right? So people pleasing is definitely the hardest one to release because it is so ingrained in so many areas of your life. So I think you have a lot of realtors in this space, and I do work
yes.
with realtors. And how it shows up for them is often in pricing, in overgiving, in some of my realtors also work in the construction world. So in
Yeah.
the way that they will answer their phone all weekend long. And a big thing with the women
Mhm.
I work with is slow down to speed up. You don't have to be available all the time. And everyone that I work with makes more money, but and they slow down, which kind of taps into like the whole life thing. Like we don't have to work all the time in order to be successful. The women I work with, they love to be wildly successful. They want like the crystal level awards. They want the top accolades, and you don't have to push all the time and wear yourself out to the bone to become that person. So people pleasing and letting go of that part of yourself and being able to hold boundaries is a huge part of, I think, catapulting your business and yourself forward.
Well, yes, and just even to take one part of what you said, when you look at boundaries, I teach new agents all the time, and it is true that the newer agent who is more uncomfortable in a certain circumstance, maybe a listing appointment, or a buyer appointment, is going to bridge that silence faster, and it usually translates into less income, less commission for that agent.
Yeah.
It is, we
Sure.
call like a newbie trick, right? Or newbie issue, being green in the field. Cause I've been in sales for so long, and it's just something I've identified over the years as something that happens very easily for the newer agents within their first year or two. They're much more likely to take away any social discomfort by
Yeah.
fixing it by lowering their commission. And yes, it can be, thousands of dollars, multiple thousands of dollars, and certainly tens of thousands of dollars over time. Wouldn't that be a nice bonus if you're able to avoid that predicament, avoid the automatic sort of basis of action to cure that discomfort. So obviously that is
Yeah.
of great value, what you're doing to help these women. And I also like what you talked about with regard to, you do not need to work yourself to the bone in order to have high level of success. There is something to be said in the industry with regularity and structure. And there's also something to be said for operating really highly and really well when you are operating. But that doesn't mean that you need to be 100% eating, sleeping, drinking, real estate, or whatever business you're in
Mhm.
order to succeed. There may be seasons where maybe you have a higher client demand or not. But then there's ways to make money off of that. I just spent a month away and I would refer out, business. And yes, it's not the same income, but my income did not stop just because I was gone. There's certain jobs like this have that flexibility. So I
Yeah.
love that you said like you can still want the award, but you can also have a life within that and find ways to not behave on. What I'm hearing a lot of is not behave on automatic.
Yeah. And I love
Actually
that you
choose.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I love that you said that the newer agents struggle with jumping
Mhm.
in and lowering their commission or whatever else. And I tell my people that I work with all the time, say prices and then zip it. Nothing else, silence. The next one to speak, it wins essentially. Like it's not like a win
Okay.
lose, but
Yeah.
just zip it. But what happens is your brain starts filling in the holes, and it's like, oh, they think it's too much. Oh, they think I should lower my commission rate, and that's not necessarily the case. We're filling in
Exactly.
things we don't know, so wait and see what they think. And 100%. I love helping my people learn that you can slow down and listen to your body. We can't pour from an empty cup. I know we've all heard that, but
Yes.
it's so true.
Yeah.
Like one of the things I have my people do in nervous system work is set an alarm every 2 hours and ask yourself, what do I need right now? Do I need water? Do I need a meal? As a nurse, I used to go 12 hours without eating. I used to go 12 hours without using the restroom. Like, what do you
Yes.
actually need? What does your body need?
Yeah.
Because you're going to function so much more highly from a regulated body.
Well, and that's so interesting too when you talk about, across professions that help people. I had Ruby and Sam, two different sobriety coaches on my program within the last year. And they will often say, we don't ask ourselves what we need. As adults, we will ask that of
Mhm.
our children. We're constantly assessing and sort of triaging them to say, hey, do
Mhm.
you need this? Or, oh, I see you're upset right now. Are you tired, hungry, thirsty? Do you need a nap? And you kind
Yeah.
of go through the list as a mom or as a care person. And we don't do that to ourselves. And so by the end of the day, we've just had it. And that's when,
Yeah.
the cork comes out of the bottle and, that self-soothing mechanism, it has been there all day, but it's got to kick in at some point. And people will either have dessert, they'll have, and it's not to say you could never have a dessert, but, it depends if it's impinging on your life at some point, if it's disturbing your sleep, if
Mhm.
it's making you gain weight you don't want to gain, or whatever that is. And so that soothingness will come at some point if you're not caring for yourself, all day long, and you're in a really high stress state or very busy. You may end up eating too much or, having sugars or having alcohols or having other things that are in fact now going to set you up for a more stressful day the next day because you're not able to have great health. You're not having the best sleep you can. Maybe your blood sugar is going wild in the middle of the night. And so you're
Mhm.
actually now setting yourself up for even more stress. And maybe it takes till the
Yeah.
weekend when you can kind of fully reset yourself. And you could have maybe done that during the day. So I absolutely love what you just
Yeah.
said
And
about
I
that because we forget that self care. it sounds like such a silly buzzword that I think is like blamed on the
Mhm.
millennials, but it's really incredible. It's just a few minutes. I've got boiled eggs in another room or something because I've learned that I need to eat more protein all day. And
Yeah.
I actually do have to stop every few hours and think about how much water and how many boiled eggs am I eating? What were you going to say?
Oh, yeah. And, I had a point earlier today. I have 2 hour and a half calls in a row on Wednesdays, and I set 10 minutes in between. It doesn't have to be long, like you just said. I set 10 minutes in between to put my feet in the grass and like let myself feel the sun on my face. Like, you don't have to have all this extra time. I work with a lot of high powered women in very busy careers who have so much going on, but you can have 2 minutes here, 2 minutes between a meeting, 2 minutes to pause and
Mm.
just check in with yourself. Because otherwise we get to, I don't like to say burnout, but most women get to the I want to burn it all down. I don't know if I love what I do anymore. I think I just want to walk away and go work on a butterfly farm. And a lot of times they don't. They just haven't been taking care of themselves.
Exactly. I mean, when every day is you're pushing yourself through a sprint and it's relentless, that does not feel fun. And I've done both.
Mhm.
And it's very true. And it's funny, like you say, it could be these little things. I encourage agents of mine to just, we have a nice garden and a nice, I have like a 1930s bungalow where my office is located and a nice patio. And I'll say, guys, go do your calls outside today. The sun is out. In the Pacific Northwest,
Mhm.
this doesn't happen that often. So let's enjoy that
Yeah.
and go. I kind of jokingly say go hug a tree, or I'll say like let's get a
No,
taco,
really, go
and
hug a
just so
tree.
we're no, literally, yeah. I always say I pet them, not hug them, because if you hug them, you'll get spiders in your hair, and that's not fun. But
Yeah.
but it's I jokingly say that just because I think it makes people remember the point. And you are making such a
Mhm.
good point here as well, because I know there's been studies around this that if you're learning, trying to take in knowledge, we've got agents who are studying for their licensing exam and I'll tell them once an hour, you've got to get outside and just stare at nature because they know that if you will do that, a larger percentage of your brain will start activating. We are,
Mhm.
in a sense, like monkeys, like we respond very well and our brain kind of snaps out of it and wakes up and you suddenly listen to the trees and you see a bird over there and we don't realize it, but we're becoming like hyper, turned on, basically like sensitized. And they say that your memory will work much better. So it's not only
Oh,
that, but
yeah.
it will make you more optimistic and feel happy. So when you said put your feet in the dirt or in the grass, I mean biohackers are doing this now. So this
Mhm.
is
Yeah.
this is fantastic. I want to ask you a question about this. Your work, and I think this will lead perfectly off what we're saying. Your work combines coaching, nursing, somatic
Mhm.
practice, which you've defined as, working with your nervous system, business, mentorship, and storytelling. Who or what
Yeah.
taught you that sustainable
Mhm.
leadership transformation has to involve the body, not only better strategies or more, just more positive thoughts, but that this is a whole body system?
Yeah, I don't think it was one. I can't pin it to one person that taught me all of this because it's been a lot of different off takes that I've been down. And I would say my journey and my road as a whole brought me to understand that weaving all of these things together was going to be the most powerful combination in order for women to actually make the impact and reach the people that they want to reach and really give them a mic to bring their magic to life. And I mean, I think from the nursing world, I have all of the understanding of what's actually happening in their body. And then from coaching, when I started weaving that art into it, and then I started coaching people, I was like, you know what? There's another piece here because people can know what they want to do and they can understand it, but then they're not moving towards it. And
Yes.
they would just stay stuck, kind of like people can be in therapy for 20 years. And there's a point when therapy is really beneficial and it's moving you forward. And then there's a point where people get to that they tell me, I feel like I know everything. I have very high awareness. I've done a lot of healing, but now I'm not moving towards the life that I actually want. And that's because at that point, and some therapists integrate somatics, they integrate nervous system work, and they integrate all of this together, which is so cool. And then some don't. It's just two different takes on it. And
Yes.
I'm not sure where I was going with that, but it's all an art and it weaves together. And I think a big part of it was doing the work on myself and rewiring my entire nervous system. And then I did several somatic programs, and then I went and got my somatic certification, which kind of just brought it all together. So I really do weave it all together. Like, where do you want to move forward in your business? What's showing up in your body? Where do we want to be, and
Yeah.
what's stopping us? Like, what's the mindset? What's the body say? And where do we actually want to be?
On that. And it's fantastic that, you've chosen females and females in business and or entrepreneurs as a category that you, I'm assuming, have begun to specialize in because or have specialized in because there is a need for this. We know that high powered women in particular seem to be juggling it all. And while that in itself is something, wonderful and magnificent, it can be incredibly hard and weighing. And it is the opportunity that exists today in America for women that did not exist in history, did not exist, does not exist in multiple other countries right now. This is not even a problem a lot of women can have in many other places. So it's this great opportunity for us and at a level that is greater than we've ever seen in the history of the US as well, where you can really, the glass ceiling for women is being shattered every day. And, women are at the highest offices in the land. Women are doing some of the greatest work and innovation and all of that. Meanwhile, raising families or being caretaker for their elderly or whatever it is. And so I think it's just extraordinary that you are, have chosen this group to dive into. And it's certainly why we have this podcast, because we need to put our hands together and kind of bring each other up and bring each other along to be able
Yeah.
to help women who are doing all this. I wanted to ask about, you teach that confidence does not come from forcing yourself through fear. It comes from building enough internal safety to move while fear is present. This is not something that I've seen
Yes.
before, and I think it's a lot of wisdom. What practices help you recognize when you are acting from self-trust versus simply performing certainty, and how does this work?
One big thing that I don't think we pay enough attention to, and I think the world around us, culture, people, has taught us not to listen to our intuition, not to listen to our inner knowing, if you will, that tells
Yes.
us, yes, this is for me. No, this is not for me. And I will tell you, from years of being highly dysregulated, go, go, go person, I didn't think I had an intuition. And so when I started slowing down and practicing it and I started really simple. Do I want eggs or do I not? What does a yes feel like in my body? What does a no feel like in my body? And over time, it got way more clear to me from practicing it. And when we listen to that inner knowing, we learn to actually trust ourselves. And what happens when people push through to do something and think, I'm just going to fake it till I make it. I'm going to build confidence by going way beyond what my body thinks is comfortable. Then they essentially tell their body, I don't trust you. I don't trust myself. I'm not going to listen to myself. And when we don't listen to the fear, we don't say, hey, I see you. I understand why you're here. I understand why you want to protect me. I understand that the whole class laughed at us when we read our poem in 5th grade. And so now showing up and speaking on stage feels really scary. And we just push it down. It only gets bigger and bigger until it is eventually going to have a voice in your life.
It's incredible. I remember a phrase, what you resist persists.
Hmm.
Just as we know among, clients and people that maybe we're mentoring or teaching, if you can hear them and acknowledge what it is they're dealing with that is stopping them, then that thing that's stopping them can begin to dissipate. But if you
Mm,
never ask the question, if you're never there to hear it, if you're never there to be that, say shoulder or sounding board, then that tends to maybe be something that continues to keep them stuck. So I always tell my agents, being in sales is a lot of being a listener and a problem solver. And the listening is the most important by far of the two, because people cannot release what they cannot express. But what you're talking about is
mm.
having to express it to, being able, learning, in fact, to express these things to yourself, and even, in fact, recognizing true, perhaps authentic thought that's coming from yourself. I think that it can be so informative to everyone, even like you said, a simple decision. Do I really want eggs or not? Rather than because of, because my trainer says this, or I'm the kind of person who eats protein, or I'm a go-getter and, my day requires whatever. You can see the reasons for actually making such a simple choice can be vast and hidden from us and very
Yeah.
automatic. You're talking
Yeah. And
about a genuine choice.
yeah, and I want like earlier you said that we have this essentially glass ceiling, right? A
Mhm.
lot of times that there's so many fears there that keep us from reaching a certain level. Most women have a certain amount of money they'll allow themselves to make, a certain level of success that's okay, and then beyond that, it's not okay. And I want every woman to be able to move through those glass ceilings on repeat so that they don't have any limits to what they can do. And I essentially like for them to take this fear and instead of it standing in front of them, bring it alongside you. We're going to listen to it.
Yeah.
We're going to allow it. We're going to hold its hand. We're going to bring it with us and we're going to teach it that we can be in self leadership and we can show it a different way. We can create new patterns.
This was actually quite profound what you just said about these levels of, success. And, people will think, I just haven't hit this yet. I want it. But does
Hmm.
wanting it mean that yourself as a whole person has decided or chosen that? And you just touched on something I think quite important, which is that we can create false limits. I did a little bit work on this. In a workshop last fall where we had to write, hey, let's take the amount of money I want to make and put it into reality. And what would happen then? What are the pros? What are the cons? What supports that? What doesn't? What would actually happen? What would I buy? What would I do? And I realized I had something stuck in my mind about the responsibility and time and whatever of that level of success, potentially
Right.
taking me away from my family. And it was
100%.
absolutely, of course, just like a hard stop in my mind, because I do place so much importance on that. And while I logically knew this for certain decisions, I knew it for, okay, this weekend I choose this or that, right? I choose family or work, or I choose, what to do in this hour.
Mhm.
And I knew I was making, choices that I had decided. But this was one that was in the back of my mind going,
Yeah.
wow, let's not actually be that successful. So it's fascinating what you just
Yeah.
said. And I think if more people can find a way to tune into that, and we'll discuss maybe some of the how as we go forward. Um,
Yeah. And I love
y-
what you just said about, just real quick about the fear of success and who that would make you as a mom, because I will tell you, you are not
Mhm.
alone in that. There are so many women that have, and most people are really surprised, like, oh, I thought I was afraid of failure. More are afraid of success. More are afraid if
Definitely.
I'm just wildly successful, what will that mean for who I become?
100%. I mean, we think of the, what was it, the Marianne Williamson, poem that, it is actually the light inside of you that, you shy away from or that you're most afraid of. I'll have to think of the words, but, it's
Mhm.
extremely well known and has been attributed to various leaders and things, but it was actually written by her from one of her books. And it's the light inside of us that scares us the
Mhm.
most. And I
Yeah.
thought that was such a brilliant statement and so clear on what you're saying here. So you've been very clear that you wanted a business that worked with your life rather than a life that revolved around your business. What
Mhm.
boundaries or operating decisions practically have protected that vision when greater visibility and growth have demanded perhaps more from you as you've grown?
So I I will say this is an ever moving thing as business
Mhm.
grows and scales, it changes. But I am really big on just first of all setting my hours to work with my life. From 3 to 6 p.m., I'm going to be with my kids. If I'm picking them, I'm going to pick up my kids from school. I'm going to take them to school in the morning. Those were hard stops for me when I started my business. So when things are really crazy, sometimes that means I'm gonna work in the evening when they're in bed, and I will have a little bit different hours, but that's what works for me in my life. And then just being willing to not need to respond to everything right away. I always say, no one's going to die because I used to be a nurse and literally someone could die if I didn't
Yeah.
show up right away or do things right
Yeah.
away. And so now I am just have to remind myself, no one will die. I can get back to that on Monday. I can come back to that later. I can schedule them a month from now. I can schedule them 2 months from now. Um,
Yeah.
and just letting that be kind of a hard boundary. And I'm also really big on time off. I heard early in my business, make it a goal to take 1 day off a week, 1 week off a month, and 1 month off a year. And I take 1 day off a week. I take almost 1 week off a month. And eventually I'll take 1 month off a year. I'm not quite there yet.
Well, I'm a fan. So I absolutely, you've got to have your reset time and you've got to work, I think, for something.
Mhm.
Work itself can be really rewarding, but you also have the other things that the work and the financial output provides. And it provides a you that can go contribute back into your own life. And if you don't have time to do that, so I think that's such good advice for the
Yeah.
listeners. Um, Women are often expected to be confident but not intimidating,
Oh,
visible, but still
uh-huh.
likable, ambitious, but endlessly available.
Mhm.
How do these contradictions teach women to dilute themselves? And what does it take to remain fully expressed when someone is uncomfortable with who they have or you have become?
Yeah. Such a good question. I often say leadership requires being misunderstood. And I think there are so many expectations on women to be both this and this. And maybe you really want to be both. But if you don't, I think that when women tap into freeing themselves to actually be who they want to be, they make more
Yes.
money. They do better at their job. They are more authentic. People feel that authenticity and love that authenticity. And I guess I would just say build enough internal safety. I always say safety is like a seesaw where you want to, if the fear is being misunderstood or people saying that you're not nice or you're rude or whatever else or judging you, what is the fear? Usually it's a fear of losing belonging, being judged, being misunderstood. And how do we create enough safety that you can tip that seesaw in the direction of safety so that you can be fully yourself? Because at the end of the day, the people we usually fear losing belonging from aren't usually people that we actually care about having belonging from.
Interesting. Uh huh. That's exactly what was running through my mind when you said that. It's the they, right? The
Mhm.
proverbial, all the people, the world, for example, take social media. I've got agents and people that I coach going, yeah, I don't, I fear putting that out there and I'm not sure.
Mhm.
and they're just so bound up by it. And I go, who? But they will think this, they will think that. I said, who
Who
is
are
they?
they?
The last
Who are they?
post that you made had 22 people, and most
Hmm.
of them were your friends and family. Who is the they? The world. You're not on a national stage.
Hmm. And
The
even if you
internet
are on
is
a
vast.
national stage,
Even if you, yeah, sure. Even if you were, and let's go there. But the real reality is that for the most part, we are not. We have a small, very tiny subsection of the vast worldwide internet that may ever see what it is you do, say, or post. And anyway, that will get replaced by something else in their mind within a few seconds. So who is that they? The
mhm.
proverbial they. And then also, like you pointed out, sure, do you even care what they think or why? Why would you care? Can we talk about that a little bit more? And also, how do you create internal safety?
Yeah. So I often ask people, whose voice is that you're hearing when you're scared to go
Mm.
online and make the post, like you were just saying? Whose voice is there? A person that you're visualizing right before you make the post? If there's actually a person in your close knit life that you're afraid of what they'll think of you, block them. Block them. They don't need to be in your space if they're keeping you from reaching your potential, at least for now while you build your confidence, right? And what was the second part of your question?
Fantastic. Yeah. How do we build that internal safety
Mm,
so that seesaw moment can work more effectively? Whatever that tipping point is, how do you build that internal safety net?
yeah. So one thing that I like to bring in for my people a lot, and I'll tell this with a personal story, is that day that I went on stage at my friend's funeral and gave her eulogy. I did three things that I did not realize at the time created enough safety for me to show up. And those are giving yourself choice, connection, and context. So by choice, I had the choice to go up there or not. And I had our three closest people, essentially our team of people who had taken care of her, uh, but were standing right behind me. I had that connection with them. I also had the connection with her family right in front of me that made it possible for me because I just looked at them that entire time, right? And then context. I wasn't filling in the holes with what was possible, the ways that people could judge me. When people are scared to go online, they're filling in the holes of all the ways people might judge them or all the things people might say. Or one that I hear often is there's a lot of negativity out there. What if my feed gets filled with all this negativity? I've been building on social media for 4 years and I've never, barely ever had a negative person come in. And you have the choice in everything you do to show up or not, to show up in the meeting and be fully yourself, to speak up and say what you really think. How can you build connection in that room? If it's a networking event, do you know anyone going? Like, how can you build more connection to make yourself feel a little bit safer? And then where are you filling in the holes? Where are you filling in the context where you could give yourself better context?
Love that. This reminds me of something that I've often said, in trainings, which is, guys, you think that you've been calling a person a number of times and they are, ghosting you, or there's this idea of ghosting
Uh-huh.
this person you've shown houses to or whatnot. That you want to talk to this client again, but they're not picking up, and you create a negativity of, they're ghosting you. And what I've said is, look, you don't actually know factually whether they want to work with you anymore or not, but you're assuming that
Mhm.
they're rejecting you. And
Yeah.
that assumption of that is stealing your wind in your sales when
Mhm.
you are sitting down to make your calls and do your job. It's filling you with a sense of dread and negativity. And it's probably coming out in the tonality of your voice and your choice of words when you finally do
Mhm.
get them on the phone or when you leave a
Mhm.
voicemail or a text. It's showing up. And so assume the positive, because you're just assuming. You don't actually know. They haven't said, I don't like you. Never call me
Yeah.
again. And when they do,
Yeah.
that's fine. You make sure to
Yeah,
put them in the do not
until they
call, right?
actually tell you, you
But
don't know.
yeah, but until that happens, Don't assume the negative. Assume, if you're going to assume something, and our brains are wonderful at assuming all the time. And I do say that with like a little bit of sarcasm, but it's true. Assume the positive. They can't
Yeah.
wait to work with me again. They're busy in their life, but they really feel bad if they miss my call. They keep thinking they're going to call me back and they're just running out of time, whatever it is. You know, they're just afraid. Maybe they're stuck somehow, but they really got a lot of value out of talking to me that time that we did. So make
Yeah.
at least create a reality of your choice. If you're gonna run away and create a bunch of non-realities,
Yeah.
make one that inspires you a little bit and helps you, and at least recognize that you are in fact creating from your mind. You're not looking at reality when you're assuming these things.
Yeah, and the reality is that we're only aware of about 4% of the thoughts going on in our head. So a big part of that
Wow.
is being aware of what's actually going on in your head. So if you're feeling kind of down when you go to make those calls, feeling low energy, and you're not sure why, like start with bringing awareness. What are the things going on in the background? What happens if they don't want me to call them anymore? What does that mean about me? What am I making that mean about me?
Yeah, that's significance because it can be suffocating. I love what you said about that. Take a thought moment and just do some exploration of what's going on
Mhm.
in your head and what does that really mean. Um, there was something I wanted to ask you. Your work sits at the intersection of visibility, nervous system safety, and business growth. What are your three non negotiables for helping a woman expand her influence without turning her life story or personality maybe into another exhausting performance? And I really did like, the choice, connection, context, and maybe that's it. And maybe it's the one day a week, 1 week a month, that kind of thing. But can you think of any other things that you tried to instill as, uh, you know, formats for a life that is going to make more sense for someone?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that I do with all of my people is we are constantly building safety, which we've touched on here. And a lot of times that looks like one becoming so aware of the thoughts, of the things coming up in your body. Like when you notice your chest is tight, if your body had a microphone and it could speak, what would it say? We do a lot of weird things in somatics. I will warn you that right now. We do a lot of woo, and coming from a medical family, sometimes I'm like, oh my gosh, where have I gone? But it works. It works.
Yeah.
But we give it a mic, we listen to the fear, and then we say, okay, what is the safety that your body needs right now in order to take a step forward? And if they're really frozen, we always turn away from it. If they're trying to move towards something big, speaking on a stage, doing something that feels so hard and out of their comfort zone, always turn away from it. Go do something that makes you feel happy, present, and good. Go for a walk, have a dance party. It's not always breathing. It's some laying in the grass like we talked about earlier, and then come back
Yeah.
to it. Step smaller.
I love that. Yes, because I understand what you're saying. And we had talked about this earlier that just pushing, kind of brute force pushing through the fear could create some issues of its own, brute force pushing through the discomfort. In business, we do have a lot of sayings like that. All of the success you seek is
Mhm.
on the other side of your discomfort. We don't really give guidance all that often, I think, as an industry on
Mhm.
how to get through that discomfort. It's just this like, very almost like masculine, I'll say, idea of like, okay, brute force, shove yourself through it, kicking and
Yeah.
screaming, jump off the cliff when you're afraid of heights. And this idea that, stop trying to shove yourself, turn away from it, go do something that makes yourself feel, and I love those words, happy, present, and good. I wrote those down.
Mhm.
Um, just to like pop that kind of bubble of stress a little bit. Whew, like let it out. I can actually feel how that would certainly, really benefit a person who found themselves struggling and then maybe come back to revisit that subject when it's not
Yeah.
quite so large and significant, climb
Yeah.
that
And
hill when you're more ready.
yeah, and celebrating the discomfort. That sounds so weird to people, But
Yeah.
again, with the celebrations, my clients will tell you I am the queen of celebrations. But if they come to me and they're like, I am so uncomfortable, I'm like, good job. Like, celebrate being in the discomfort because very rarely do you arrive at a point and you're like, I'm here, I've arrived, I'm finally here. No, usually by the time you get there, you're looking at the next place you want to get to.
Yeah.
So, what if we just
Yeah.
celebrate the journey and the discomfort of being in the journey instead of being at the point where you fully arrived?
This is
I
so
don't think
good
we ever
because we often do, like you say, we forget to give ourselves credit. And absolutely, the people who are, and I think we can all be this way at any level, but that are so busy climbing that next hill
Mhm.
have forgotten to celebrate the last one. The percentage that we just climbed, and I think there's a whole book on this. Whatever the gap, minding the gap versus the gain, or whatnot. But
Never.
just the idea. Yeah, but just, that minding that idea that you really have a lot that you've probably gone through and come through and been able to achieve so far. And let's talk about that. I did a training actually just a few weeks ago with my agents on that, because we do work through a lot of mindset and psychology because ultimately sales is all about you
Good.
and the rest of the world and your ability to communicate and problem solve. And if you can't show up, in a big way, it can be very tough. I've taken some agents that were very stressed or having a down day, and I said, don't call a single person. Just do some organization in your database. Just that's
Mhm.
all. Just do some
Right.
organization. And I think this is maybe perhaps a little bit like that turning away because at that point, all they're doing like one or two little things that's just pure housekeeping. That's it. It's just cleaning up stuff that'll make their job easier the next time they pick up the phone. And do you know, without fail, they'll want to pick up the phone at some point, an
Oh,
hour or
yeah.
two in, because they'll go, oh my gosh, there was this person that I didn't realize I haven't called them in a little while. And I'm reading the notes and I'm deciding when I should call them again. And now I want to call them now because I just
Yeah.
realized, this person needs me. And it's so funny because they could be frozen and they'll just sit at their desk. But I think
Yeah.
that ability to recognize when you're stuck and not just keep sitting in that is
Yeah.
unhelpful.
Yeah, the
I've,
reality is
I've
when
sent
we're
some agents for tacos or coffee or like go walk around the block. Go ahead.
Oh, no, the reality is when we're dysregulated, we can't be curious, we can't think really clearly, we can't, go do big, scary things. I always Healing is like a spiral that you go around, and you go around one point and you're expanding and growing and doing the big, scary things, and there's a lot of this in the realtor world, right? Like, you're constantly putting yourself out there and being visible and selling. Those are all visibility things that it's a lot on your system, and then you have to have moments where you come back in and you regulate. But that's why if you learn to regulate on the regular, that sounded really repetitive, but if
I
you
like
learn to
it.
slow down and listen to your body every 2 hours constantly and notice what you actually need, you're going to not have these big moments where you have to take hours off or you need a full week off or you really need vacation. Like, you're going to learn to be present in your whole life.
Yeah. Phenomenal. Well, I know that our time is coming to a close. I wanted to ask you about the future.
Hmm.
Your mission is to create a movement of women who stop waiting for permission, stop editing the fire out of their voices, and build businesses that reflect who they truly are. As that movement grows, what do you hope becomes possible for the next generation of women that
Mhm.
was not possible previously or did not feel safe for you?
Hmm. I hope the next generation learns younger, and I do think they will, but I'm surrounded by them because I have teenagers. Uh, Learns younger that people pleasing is not who they are, that perfectionism is not who they are, that they learn how to work with their body and can let their voice out because I know there are so many women sitting on incredible ideas, sitting on so much impact they could make and not able to move forward because they think, why me? I'm not sure I belong. I'm not sure I have anything to say. I'm not sure anyone wants to listen to me. I know I've
Yeah.
been there. I've felt that too. So just to allow them to free their voice and be authentically themselves and realize that that is their superpower.
I love that. Be authentically yourself and recognize that that is your superpower.
Hmm.
I love it. Well, thank you for leaving us on such great words of wisdom. It has been an amazing and insightful, revealing conversation. And I know that this has provided incredible value to the audience. So I just want to thank you so much on behalf of Women Who Rise. Where
Yeah, thank you
can
for having me.
our You're welcome. Where can guests find you if they want to tap into the wisdom that is Caroline Brown?
They can mostly find me over on Instagram at Caroline Brown Coaching. My website is also Caroline Brown Coaching. I'm Caroline Brown Coaching on TikTok, but I don't do much over there, but mostly on Instagram. And I keep it pretty simple across the board. It's just my name.
Awesome. Well, you guys know where to find Caroline, and I hope you do. We'll have more great tips and some wonderful information for you here in a moment as we go through our worksheet for some thought provoking questions for you. Please stay tuned in a moment for that. Well, folks, that's it for today's podcast. Thank you so much for joining us on Women Who Rise, the success podcast for ambitious women. Today, Caroline taught us number one, bringing awareness to our thoughts can bring you safety and freedom. Number two, that pushing through fear is not always the way. Instead, you can work to resolve your discomfort and create inner safety first. Then go back to that challenging thing when you are prepared. She talked about also only 4% of our thoughts are what we are aware of. So, in bringing more awareness to those thoughts, you are able to recognize and establish what is going on in your mind so that you can work with it to give you more freedom and to find out what fears might be running you. Number three, she talked about learning to take a break each few hours throughout your job. Go do something that makes you feel happy, present, and good. Go put your, feet in the sand, go hug a tree, go outside and just stare at the trees or the sun, get some sun on your face. These things incrementally throughout the day can give you energy and solace throughout your busy day so that that cup that you are leading from is not empty at the end of a big work day. And then fourth, she talked about perfection is not who you are. Learning to be authentically who you are is your true superpower. She wants women of all ages and younger women as well to create a movement to learn sooner that these things are superpowers, that being able to know that you don't have to be a people pleaser, you don't have to be perfect, and you can in fact lead from your authentic self and make life choices from your authentic self. So thank you so much for being here. Please visit our website to find our episode guide and worksheet that will help you use these tips and many more to take action in your own life. Like and subscribe and join us everywhere podcasts are streamed. We can't wait to bring you more incredible content every week so that you can rise in your own lives and careers. Again, thank you so much. Heather Mansy, signing off.